Welcome back to the Ingram Angle. We're less than 24 hours away from President Trump's high-stakes summit with Vladimir Putin in Alaska. And today, we learned a bit more about what President Trump expects from this meeting.
Does Putin have a strong hand tomorrow?
I think that President Putin would like to see a deal. I think if I weren't president, he would take over all of Ukraine. It's a war that should have never happened. If I weren't president, in my opinion, he would much rather take over all of Ukraine. But I am president, and he's not going to mess around with me. Tomorrow, all I want to do is set the table for the next meeting, which should happen shortly. To find out where everybody stands. We tend to find out whether or not we're going to have a good meeting or a bad meeting. And if it's a bad meeting, it'll end very quickly. And if it's a good meeting, we're going to end up getting peace in the pretty near future.
Here to respond, KT McFarland, former Trump Deputy National Security Advisor. KT, thanks for being here. Tell me how Trump is different from other presidents when he goes into these types of negotiations. You say he's an improviser. What does that mean? And what will a good meeting look like, do you think?
Well, Raymond, here's the thing. I've been in the White House Situation Room for 4 presidents, going back to Richard Nixon. And President Trump is really different. Now, why? Well, he's a businessman, and he approaches problems in a very different way. Most political leaders say, well, I want this as my end result. And yet they kind of have plan A that they're going to follow. And maybe they get to that result, maybe they don't. But they never improvise. President Trump always improvises, and he's a businessman. He wants to get the deal done. So he had plan A. Plan A was he thought he would walk into office and his charm and personality would bring Putin and Zelensky to the negotiating table. Didn't work. Plan B, he used economic pressure and military pressure against Zelensky. That did bring him to the negotiating table, but it didn't bring Putin. Now he's on to Plan C. Plan C tomorrow, he'll find out. Does Putin really want to do a deal, or does he want to just play for time? In which case, President Trump will be on Plan D. He'll get the job done. He just may have to use a little bit of improvisation to get there.
KT, I spoke with Secretary of State Marco Rubio last week about the possibilities for peace. Here's what he said was the prerequisite. Did they talk about a ceasefire? Is that in the
Well,
war?
I don't think they're specific about. Obviously, the goal here is to end the war completely. As long as you're shooting at each other, it's hard to negotiate peace permanently.
So that's going to have to be a precursor to
We've always felt it is.
Yeah.
Like, look, if we can arrive at a final deal and it's over completely, that would be great. We'd prefer that, a permanent ceasefire.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need an interim ceasefire simply to get everybody to the table and to talk.
KT, is that the short-term goal here, an interim ceasefire, leading, hopefully, to a permanent one?
Yeah, well, let's say, for example, let's say that tomorrow there is an interim ceasefire, or at least Putin makes it clear that he's willing to negotiate in good faith. Prior to this, he's said nice things to Donald Trump about his wishes for peace, but then he goes out and bombs, civilians in Ukraine, so he doesn't mean it. So President Trump is going to figure it out. Are you going to do it, or are you going to not do it? If he's not going to do it, then, as President Trump said, there will be severe consequences. There'll be economic consequences. If, however, Putin says, and if he's smart, he'll say, okay, I want not just a deal on Ukraine, but I want a bigger relationship with the United States. Then I think you very quickly have another meeting, a follow-up meeting on Ukraine, with the idea that maybe the United States and Russia would have a relationship going forward once Ukraine was settled.
KT, I want your reaction to this. A reporter in the Oval today asked the president if this summit and all these peace efforts could end up rewarding Putin for his invasion of Ukraine. Watch.
I don't think it's a reward. I think that what we have is a situation that should never have started, should have never started. It didn't start under me, and for 4 years it wasn't even discussed. Everybody's to blame. Putin's to blame. They're all to blame. This is a war that would have never happened.
KT, Putin has said he wants the reconstruction of the old Soviet Union. If this meeting tomorrow doesn't end in a ceasefire of some kind, what do you think Trump's next move is?
Well, let's say it doesn't end in a ceasefire, but at least it ends where President Trump thinks there's a possibility down the road, and then he can move very quickly to the next step of it. But if it doesn't happen, if Putin does want to reconstruct the former Soviet Union, if he does want to keep fighting, he's winning this war of it's a war of attrition. He's winning it, inch by inch, foot by foot. The grinding, horrible consequences. But if that's the war Putin wants to fight, Donald Trump knows how to get to him. Why? How? You bankrupt him. The reason that Putin didn't invade anybody when Donald Trump was president is because oil prices were low thanks to President Trump's energy policy. Putin might have wanted to invade everybody, but he didn't have the money to do it. Figuring that President Biden gave him $100 billion in energy prices.
Yeah, KT, look, his economy, the Russian economy, is decimated right now, and he has lost 400,000 troops in this battle. So I'm sure Putin is looking for an exit ramp, and his people are apparently fed up with this war. Thank you, KT, as always.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.